Hello, my name's Peter Darragh. I'm the biology tutor at Worcester College, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about how biology at Oxford works and what's involved in its study. So, why study biology at Oxford? Well, we believe that Oxford offers the widest ranging set of biological topics of pretty much any undergraduate degree in the UK. It's taught by two departments, it's plant sciences and zoology, and the combination allows us to cover pretty much all organisms from viruses, a lot of work on COVID going on in the departments at the moment, through microbes, plants, invertebrates, and vertebrates. And as well as that very wide taxonomic range, we also teach across the different scales of life. So from the molecular genetic level through to the organismal, the level of the organism, right up to the ecosystem scales when we see how populations interact. This breadth is probably most apparent in the range of fourth year projects that we will be able to offer you. And a challenge would be, can you think of a biological topic that you could not do a research project on in the two departments? And we think there's very few of that type. As well as the teaching, we have a superb set of biological resources. So we have the Natural History Museum. You actually have about half of your lectures in the second year in the museum. The downside of 9 o'clock lectures have a great upside because you have the museum to yourself, because it doesn't actually open to the public till 10 o'clock. We have a botanic garden, an arboretum, herbarium, and just outside the city, 400-hectare area of woodland and a field station offering huge opportunities for field research. This is Oxford, so all students belong to a college, and each college has at least one dedicated biology tutor. And one of the great advantages of the college system, not just for teaching, is the pastoral side of things. So it provides an immense amount of care, support, encouragement, and a sense of belonging. So you belong to an organisation of 400 to 500 students, both undergraduate and graduate, within the context of the university that has around about 15,000. The biology course is an MBiol course, so it's a 4-year course leading to a master's in biology, but you can exit at 3 years and take a BA biology degree. Everyone actually starts on the 4-year course, but there is no difficulty in leaving after 3 if you want to. We teach biology principally by lectures, practicals, and computer classes. Though the 4th year is entirely a research project based. There is a progression hurdle between the 3rd and the 4th year, but it's set at the level of having to achieve a 2-1, and to be honest, almost everyone doing biology at Oxford will get a 2-1 or better. The principal overview of the course is given in the table below, so you can see the taught element is the 3 years of the BA biology course, and then the final year is a research project. And in common with a lot of universities offering biology, we start with mainly compulsory, and you get more and more choices the further through the course you get. In terms of your workload, you might expect 8 lectures a week, around about 2 practicals, maybe a couple of computer classes, and 1 tutorial per week. And then in the final year research project, you'll be spending about 40 hours per week in a lab, so it's a full-time job. Just thought it would be helpful to run just very briefly through the 4 years of the taught course at Oxford. All this material is obviously available on the web if you want to study it in greater detail. So we start obviously in the first year, and we begin with a 3-week orientation period that basically shows you elements of how to deal most effectively with becoming a student. So how to approach lectures, how to take lecture notes, how to approach tutorials, what's expected of practicals, how to read the literature. And the teaching itself is all compulsory, and is basically divided into 3 compulsory themes, and those interweave together to build an understanding of biology at as I said, the three scales of organisation. And the themes we offer are diversity of life, which looks at basically organisms, how to build a phenotype, which looks at the molecular and genetic level, and ecology and evolution, which looks at the large scale. And as I said, those interweave together so that you learn about all scales simultaneously. We also put a great emphasis on skills training, lots of practicals, probably 2 a week, and in the first term you will actually do a mini project. And then we have 1 field course in the first year, all paid for by the departments. It lasts a week, and it's in Wales in the summer term. Then moving on to the second year, once you get into the second year, you start to get an element of choice. So there are 4 themes, and you're recommended to actually take 3 out of the 4, but encouraged to do all 4, and the timetable allows you to do that. And they essentially those themes build on the first year material. So the 4 themes are cell and developmental biology, ecology and evolution, genomes and molecular biology, and organisms, behavior and physiology. And each of those big themes are split into 2 modules, each taught in a term. And there is a compulsory course covering stats or statistics and experimental design, which comprises 16 lectures and 16 classes. And then the third year actually starts in the summer term, about halfway through the summer term, and then goes on for the following year. And again, a lot of more optional content. So all the main teaching themes are optional, and they build very much on the second year knowledge. So there aren't any prerequisites. You don't have to study a second year theme to study a third year theme, but we do build progressively on that. So if you don't take the relevant second year theme, then life becomes just a little bit more difficult for you. And then there are a whole series of other activities to do with seminars and journal clubs, which are built into the timetable, but I haven't listed here at this stage, but you'll find them online. And then, as I said, the 4th year course has relatively little formal teaching. It has some skills courses really designed to help you prosper in a career in biology, but the focus is on a research project which leads to a dissertation. And it's the only form of examination in the 4th year, and it will last for the whole academic year. It's an opportunity to do original research. You will work under the guidance of an academic supervisor, either in the lab or in the field. That supervisor will have a research group consisting of graduate students and postdoctoral researchers, all working on a common set of problems which are defined really by the research interests of the supervisor. And you will be fully integrated into that research group for the year of your 4th year project. I think we can promise that the research will be original. It's likely to be challenging, but it should be rewarding. And for probably 10 or 20% of people, it's probably going to be publishable. So many students will actually get a publication as a result of this 4-year course. So that's the structure of the departmental teaching. And then supplementing that at Oxford, along with 1 or 2 other universities in the UK, we have tutorials. And tutorials are in the main college organised, though as I will explain in a little bit, biology works rather differently from a typical Oxford subject. But a tutorial is basically a 1-hour session where you discuss ideas that you have researched on a biological topic. And the tutorial allows you to study the topic in depth and to discuss the topic with an experienced academic and generally 1 or 2 other students, for an hour or so. Sometimes they overrun quite markedly if you all get very interested. So most tutorials in biology involve you preparing some work, often in the form of writing an essay, but sometimes just working through problem sheets. And I think the best description of a tutorial is that it's a lively conversation. So it's a conversation between people who know enough about the subject to have an engaged conversation on a topic that's mutually interesting. So they're often the highlight of the week for both the tutor and the students. And you will expect to have one tutorial a week in biology. And it's very difficult to give a sort of yardstick on the workload for a tutorial, but I think it probably takes about 10 hours of independent work. You're given an essay title, and then there is a lot of independent work to do to produce the written output that is then discussed. In the first year in Worcester, as in almost all colleges, all the tutorials will be given by the biology fellow, so that's me, or a retained lecturer. So there'll be 2 people, maybe 3 or 4 in bigger colleges, giving the tutorials in the first year. But past the first year, biology works very differently from almost every other subject in Oxford. So the typical Oxford tutorial experience is that pretty much all your tutorials would be with the tutors in your college for the whole of your 3 or 4 year course. Biology does it very differently, I think largely because it is such a wide-ranging course and none of us consider that we can teach the whole range. So in the second and third years, and to some extent in the fourth year, tutors teach to their subject specialities rather than just to their college students. And as a consequence, you, as a second or a third year biologist, will typically see maybe 4 or more different tutors every term from a variety of different colleges. So over the 3 or 4 years, you'll see a huge number of different academics, and it's a very powerful model. The consequence, or one of the consequences of that, is your choice of college is perhaps less important than it is in other subjects, because in the second and third and fourth years, you will be able to arrange tutorials in your chosen subjects from an academic from any department, not just your own college. And that, I think, makes for a very rewarding tutorial experience, and one that's rather different from your contemporaries studying other subjects. Okay, so that's basically the outline of the course and how tutorials work. This is an open day, so I guess you will want to know how admissions works. So I'm just going to give 2 or 3 slides explaining a little bit about how that process works. So firstly, we have some admissions requirements, and those are fairly strict, and we stick to them pretty tightly. So you need, if you're a UK student doing A-levels, you need an A-star AA to be considered. The A-star needs to be in science or maths. You need an A-level in biology, and then one of your other A-level subjects has got to be either chemistry, physics, or maths. And then there are equivalent qualifications for other non-A-level classifications. So, for instance, for the IB, it's a score of 39 with the correct subject mix. We don't ask for any written work to be submitted, and we don't currently have any tests. And we interview about 60% of all applicants. And if you're accepted for interview, then you will be interviewed, and I'll describe that process in a second. But the important thing to remember is not everything is on the interview. So the decisions we make, the places we offer, those decisions are based on all the information we have about you. So not just the interview, but all parts of the UCAS form as well. But if you are selected and you're not from a long way away overseas, you will have an interview physically in Oxford. or perhaps this year remotely in Oxford. You'll have a minimum of 2 interviews, one at the college that you apply to, so Worcester, if you apply to Worcester, and then one at another randomly assigned college. Each college will interview you independently and assess you independently on the basis of the interview and, as I said, on all the other information we have about you. Every college does its interview process a different way, so they differ in detail, but they're all basically very similar. So at Worcester, for instance, you would expect in a half-hour interview to be given a biological specimen and be prepared to discuss its attributes, to be given perhaps a set of data, a graph or a diagram, and be asked to interpret what that means in a biological context. And thirdly, to talk about an area of biology and to explain, speculate, theorize about how it works. And the important thing to realize about these interviews is we are not trying to test your current knowledge. We're trying to see how you use your existing knowledge in an unfamiliar context, to see how far you can take biological ideas. It's very important to realize in the interviews we are not intending to catch you out. There are no trick questions, but we will expect to take you past your comfort zone. So we will push you to provide answers, and we will often provide you with extra bits of information so that you can make progress with your explanations if you need a key piece of knowledge to be able to do so. So we are much more interested in your approach to biological problem solving than your current knowledge. We all know that you know huge amounts of information, and you're all going to get A star AA at A level, or the vast majority of you are. So what we are looking for, the criteria that we use to assess the interview, is an interest in or enthusiasm for biology, the ability to describe and discuss a biological topic in depth, the ability to solve problems related to biology, and the ability to make a logical, reasoned argument that connects point A and point B. And I think most importantly, we're trying to assess your academic potential, not now, but 2 or 3 years in the future. So how are you going to be able to perform as a senior Oxford undergraduate reading biology? And that's what we're actually looking for. And then I do both college open days and university open days, and one of the commonest questions I'm asked at the university open days is, which college should I apply to? This is a college interview, but it seems to make sense to answer that question here as well. And obviously there are 2 answers. The first answer is obviously Worcester, but you must recognise that I am in fact biased there. So you shouldn't take my assessment at face value. And in fact, to be honest, a more useful and honest answer is that it doesn't matter. We know that choosing a college can cause a lot of you a lot of stress and a lot of heartache. Don't worry about it. I think I can say pretty much with my hand on my heart that for almost everyone that comes up to Oxford, within a week, the best college in Oxford is the one that you're at. And particularly in biology, the tutorial system means that choosing a college because of a tutor's interest, for instance, is much less important, because in the 2nd, 3rd and 4th year, you'll be going to lots of different subject specialists. So if you don't want to make the choice, simply let the computer decide. If you make an open offer, you'll be assigned to one of the 21 colleges that admit biology, and every one of those is a good college to belong to. I mean, I will be obviously delighted if you apply to Worcester, but equally I will be delighted to teach you in whichever college you end up in. So do some virtual research, visit the colleges via their websites, if necessary use a pin, but it really doesn't matter. Okay, so I think that's the end of my talk. I hope it was useful to you, and I hope to see some of you, hopefully physically, if not virtually, in the years to come. Goodbye.
Hello, my name is Hauke Marquardt. I am the Earth Science tutor at Worcester College. In my research, I actually do high pressure, high temperature experimental research. So I pressurize materials that we expect to occur deep in in the Earth's inside and also in other planetary interiors, and try to measure how they behave under these planetary interior conditions, with the ultimate goal of actually using these data to better understand how the inner workings of our planets are actually functioning and how these affect processes on the surface of our planet. So Earth sciences in Oxford or at Worcester College are basically taught in two ways. You have the component that happens at the Department of Earth Sciences in forms of lectures and practicals and also obviously field trips. And then you have the tutorial component where you revise some of that material in a smaller group of, in the case of Worcester, 4 students, or go into new areas that are associated with the coursework but go a bit beyond what is really taught in the course, in the lectures at the university. So beside the lectures that you have in the Department of Earth Sciences, you would, in year 1, you would have 2 tutorial hours per week in this small tutorial group of 4 students where we discuss some things in more detail. And then throughout the later years, year 2, 3, and then 4, you would usually have about 1 tutorial hour per week that is on top of the lectures and the practicals in the Earth Science department. When you're thinking about applying to Earth Sciences, to Worcester, what we really look for in the application is your grades, but then also your kind of motivation statement. Why are you interested in Earth Sciences? But really the most important bit ultimately is the interview when you come here to Oxford. This is where we really make the decision about whom we're going to admit. So what's really exciting, I think, about studying Earth Sciences here in Oxford is basically the broadness of the department. So we have a lot of different faculty covering research ranging all the way from fossils, from dinosaurs, to climate change, to oceanography, to things like deep planetary interior processes, such as the things that I'm doing, involving both experiments, involving computer modeling and field work. So I think there's a wide range of interesting things to choose from. And yeah, apart from that, Oxford is a great city, it's very lively, and it's certainly a great experience to be here and study here. So yeah, hopefully we'll see each other at some point. Bye.
Hello, my name is John Parrington. I'm one of the tutors in medicine at Worcester College, and today I'd like to talk to you a little bit about what it means to apply to do medicine at Worcester. So I'm particularly interested in the more molecular and biochemical aspects of medicine. I run a lab where we do a lot of molecular and cellular approaches to medicine, and essentially we're trying to understand more about how the cell and the body work, and this involves using genetically modified cells. Something we do quite a lot of is to use new gene editing techniques to understand how genes work in the cell. But we also produce animal models of health and disease, so mice and most recently pigs using gene editing, and these are all ways to try and understand more about how the cell and the body works. Because obviously to understand what happens when things go wrong in disease, we also need to know more about the what normally happens within the cell and the body. So I'm particularly interested in what's called cell signalling, which is how chemical signals regulate processes in the cell and in the body. As I said, I use these molecular approaches to look at these things. Kim Dora, who is the other tutor in medicine here at Worcester College, is more interested in the cardiovascular side of things. So she particularly studies how the heart pumps blood around the body and how the arteries and veins are involved in that. My own work covers a whole range of different things, everything from how the sperm and egg come together to the digestion of a lipid in the gut and the utilisation of energy in the body, to a more recent topic, which is cancer, which we're studying. We're studying skin cancer, how is it that skin cancer becomes particularly deadly. So the way that medicine is taught at Worcester, like other colleges here in Oxford, is we have a number of different ways of teaching the subject. So For instance, you would go to practical classes and do practical experiments as a way of understanding more about medicine. You would also have lectures in different parts of the university. But a very important aspect of teaching here at Oxford is that we also have these tutorials, which are we have just a couple, sometimes even just one person, but usually more like 2 or 3 or 4 people in a group with a tutor. And this gives us lots of opportunities for really going into depth into a subject and really exploring the underlying concepts in a subject. And that's one of the particular, I think, unique features of Oxford, along with Cambridge, that makes it a particularly, in my opinion anyway, important place to study. I did my own degree at Cambridge, and I think I really benefited from that kind of system. How many contact hours would a typical student at Worcester have? Well, as a medic, it's hard. A lot of hard work goes into being a medic. So the day is very much full up. You'll have your practicals typically in lectures in the morning, and then tutorials in the afternoons typically. But there's also lots of other time to do other things, other extracurricular pursuits, sports, that kind of thing. And in fact, I think we often find that medics, they play hard as well as work hard. So what would it mean to have a competitive application for medicine? Well, I know this can be quite a daunting business to students, and I'd like to reassure people, because I think one of the main things to do is to be yourself and really think about what really motivates you, what drives you, and that should then come through in the application. I mean, just to give a flavour of my own background, I was the first person in my family to go to university, and I went to a fairly poorly achieving comprehensive in Bradford, but that didn't stop me getting to Cambridge, and I think it's because I had that drive and ambition to go somewhere like Cambridge that I managed in the end to be successful. But what I think is important is that the personal statement is obviously an important thing, but sometimes we get personal statements that seem a little bit too glib and a bit kind of cliche. So really think carefully about what you really are interested in and try and bring that through in the personal statement. Obviously, it's interesting to know about what other things you do besides your academic subjects, but I think the primary thing is about expressing just why it is that you love studying and learning about new things. One thing that is a big feature of the way that we admit students here at Oxford is that we have interviews where we have a whole series of things in medicine. We have an exam that you sit, it's called the BMAT. Obviously you've got your GCSEs and A-levels or whatever equivalent that you're taking, which we can all look at and try and judge how you've done in those or how you expect to do. But the interview is a very important aspect of the admissions procedure. And certainly I think one of the things we're really trying to do there is to really try and identify students that can really think deeply about a subject. They're not afraid of exploring new areas. And I think that means preparation can be very useful. You can read around lots. It's good to not just read, with the new course, but also maybe read new scientists, what's in the newspapers, the new kind of angles and approaches that you might have heard about in the news about science and medical research. But ultimately, it's also about you really engaging with the interviewer in the interview, and be willing to be tested and to really go beyond what might be your kind of comfort zone. So as I said, I think there are lots of resources that you might want to use in preparing for an interview with new scientists, Lancet, all those kind of things. But ultimately, I think it's about really looking inside yourself and thinking, well, what is it that really interests me about science, about medical research? Can I explore that further? Can I really start to try and build up some, interesting ideas of my own? Because that's the sort of thing that can then come through in an interview. One other thing I think then to think about, what is the most exciting thing about studying medicine at Oxford? Well, I would say it's not for everyone. There are other medicine courses that are absolutely, very good ways to become a doctor in this country. And they might allow you to get access to working on a ward, for instance, much quicker than you would with a course like Oxford, where essentially it's 3 years of science with very much a medical theme, and you will have contact with GPs, for instance. You have these GP visits, but it's certainly not the kind of course you should do if you really want to get into a hospital learning environment as quickly as possible. That happens here in the 4th, 5th and 6th years. But what I think you will get here is an incredibly good foundation in medical research. which will stand you instead for a career as a doctor, and will give you much more options and possibilities about the sort of things you can then do as a doctor. So you might be someone who becomes a GP, or you might be a surgeon, or a psychiatrist, or you may focus more on research or teaching. That all those possibilities can come out of a career built on doing a degree in Oxford. One of the things that I think is particularly exciting about studying here in Oxford is that you have this tutorial system that really gives you an ability to engage with a tutor on a kind of one-to-one level that is simply not possible in many of the universities to the same degree. But obviously you've got the history of the place. I mean, Worcester's got a beautiful ground, it's got this fantastic, incredible history. I think students are often take for granted actually just how unique a kind of environment it is, but it's a major thing really. But I think probably the thing that motivates me most really, and keeps me motivated as someone interested in new ideas about science and new possibilities in terms of therapy and the rest of it, is that there's always something new on the horizon, and that's true for a tutor as much as for students. I have actually a sideline alongside my research work in writing popular science books, and one of the things I've enjoyed from doing that, so this is just one of the books that's should be published, which is called Redesigning Life, which is a book about gene editing, this radical new technology that makes it possible to engineer the cells of any living organism essentially. It's led to all sorts of possibilities in agriculture, medicine, all sorts of things. But it also raises many ethical and social and political issues. I've just finished writing a book about the brain and how the mind works, and basically putting forward the idea that human consciousness is a very unique thing and something quite different to what we find in animal. And it's been exciting writing that book because it's allowed me to delve into all sorts of ethical and philosophical and other kind of social and political questions that are not strictly what I teach in terms of the stuff I do in the course for the first year medics, which is very much biochemistry, molecular biology, genetics, that kind of thing. And I think that kind of interest in ideas and new ideas and trying to push maybe the boundaries of what we know is really what motivates me still to get up and go in the lab and write either research papers or books or whatever, give talks and that kind of thing. And it's the sort of thing that I think I'd like to really hope that I can convey to students. So I think even in my tutorials with students in the first year of the course, even though the people have come straight from school, I like to get stuck right into the big questions like what is the genome, what is the point of doing this kind of molecular analysis of cells and bodies, where's it all taking us, what are the kind of big questions that it raises, what are the ethical questions, and not simply talk about what are sometimes known as the facts. So right from the start we'll see that science is a contested subject, and it's not just a simple case of facts in a textbook. It's much more interesting, much more kind of alive than that. And I'd hope that that's the sort of thing that you would pick up on in terms of studying with me here in Oxford, but also start to develop your own ideas and things as well. And one of the, I think, exciting things about being a tutor in Oxford is seeing people then go on through their careers and learn that they're doing some quite incredible things really, and keeping in touch with all students and realising that as individuals they are developing all sorts of interesting new ideas and approaches within medicine, medical research in their own right. So that's really what I wanted to say today. I mean, normally I'd be giving this kind of talk and interacting with you in my college room, but obviously we're here with the COVID crisis, and that means we're doing things slightly differently this year. And that in its sense is also a sign of just how important medicine is. And who would have thought we'd be in this situation, global pandemic, and it's actually that understanding of science and understanding not just of viruses but how viruses spread, so epidemiology, the social and kind of political questions that also come into this, that also we need to think about. So these are the things I really want to say today. One thing I would say is someone who, as I say, came from a background that my school didn't normally send people to places like Oxford colleges. I had very little help from my school at the time because they really weren't used to someone applying for someone like Cambridge. So whatever background you come from, whether it's very highly achieving school or a poorly achieving school, if you've got that drive and ambition to study Oxford, the key thing is it's up to you really. It's not up to your teachers, it's not up to your parents, it's up to you to really go all out to apply to somewhere like Oxford in this college and do your absolute best to be successful in that application process. I mean, there's lots of advice you can get from the college and also from the medical sciences faculty here if you want more advice about which A-levels to study, that kind of thing. I should say here that chemistry is an A-level that you need, but you can also have biology and maths and physics. So I think you need two sciences actually. One needs to be chemistry, but we also have people who've done French or English or history, whatever as well. But you'll find more details about the actual specifics that you need. And also, I'm sure you can find lots of web resources about applying for Oxford and that kind of thing as well. So I'll leave that there anyway, and hope that this has been useful for people who would like to apply for medicine at Worcester College. Thank you. Bye.